Welcome to the Indie Women Podcast, where we introduce you to the fearless women taking their filmmaking careers into their own hands, showing you how indie films get made. And here's your host, Heather Turman.
Hello, and welcome to the Indie Women Podcast. I am your host, Heather Turman, and this is a show dedicated to the women in the indie film world who have found success bringing their projects to life on their own terms. And I'm so thrilled to be bringing this podcast to the world, and I really hope you've been enjoying it. I've really loved talking to the women that I've interviewed so far for these last couple of weeks. It's really just elevated my overall mood and well-being, you know? So I really hope it's making you feel the same way. And I wanted to let you know that in addition to the audio version you're likely listening to, there are also full video versions of all episodes available on the Indie Women YouTube channel, which is, you know, a work in progress. It's just getting off the ground. But if you like what you're hearing, please, you know, give us a subscribe. It would be great. I also wanted to let you know that I'm looking to feature short films and feature film trailers. So the trailers of feature films that are made by indie women. So if you'd like to showcase your work, feel free to submit it to indiewomenpodcast@gmail.com. Currently, if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see that I have a couple no-budget short films that I made, as well as the trailer for my feature film Stuck is up there as well currently. But I really want to showcase the work of other female creators. So if you're looking for another outlet, if you've got an older film, you know, sitting around that's already done the festival circuit, you know, and you're looking to get new eyeballs on it, send it my way. You know, I would be honored, and it'd be great to get that work out there. Now, without further ado, this week I had the opportunity to chat with Sassy Mohen. She's a director, producer, writer, and editor. I mean, she does it all, which, I mean, of course she does. How could she not with a name like Sassy, you know? We talked all about diving right into the deep end in indie film and how, as women, we're sometimes told we can't do something that we know in our hearts we can. You know, we just have those extra hurdles and obstacles. And Sassy has some great insight on how to overcome those naysayers and how to see your projects through from concept to completion. This conversation it just left me feeling elated. It felt like I was talking to a real soul sister. So I really hope it makes you feel the same way. Please enjoy my conversation with Sassy Mohen. Well, welcome, Sassy. Is it Sassy Mohen?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Beautiful. Sassy Mohen, thank you so much for coming on. I did just see a cat run by in the background.
One of the fosters. They're on their afternoon playtime before their afternoon nap.
Very, very sweet. Bless you for fostering. Thank you so much for being a guest. I am honored to have you. All that you've done is, I feel like we don't even have time to touch it all, but I hope we can get through as much as we can. Why don't you just go ahead and jump in and fill us in on how you got started in the business, first and foremost.
Sure. Well, so thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be part of this. This is super cool. The short synopsis is like, I've known I wanted to be a director since I was about 7 years old. I'm an only child, and my parents were in the TV industry, and they always kind of surrounded me with that stuff. And it was funny because people used to tell me, my parents used to tell me I was bossy. And then one day my mom told me what a director does. They said it's someone who gets paid to boss people around. And I was like, oh, okay, well, here we go. But it's way more than that, because I just started I don't know. I was in TV production in third grade, and I just started, you know, being in theater and being in all that stuff. And it just sort of made sense. You know what I mean? And I really enjoyed every aspect of it. And my middle school and high school was extremely supportive. It was this small, artsy, place that really championed the individual. And if you basically proved to your teachers that you wanted to do something and you were dedicated to it, they would adjust curriculum kind of to fit that, or adjust what your interests were. And I knew I wanted to be a director. And so they let me assistant direct the High School Musical when I was in middle school, and they just helped out. Yeah. And I directed a bunch of plays when I was there and did TV production through all that too. And then I went to Chapman, and we could talk a little about that with the Happy Holidays stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's the whole thing. Yeah.
But so I went to Chapman and I made a feature while I was there, and that sort of launched an indie film career that I'm hoping to continue to grow with this next venture I'm doing called How to Hack Birth Control. But between 2007 and now, I've made 2 features, a couple shorts, and some web series and music videos. And now I'm doing like professionally outside of that stuff, is I'm doing a lot of directing and editing for social media, like commercial work and stuff like that. But you know, it's the stuff you scroll by on Instagram that you never watch, like that stuff. Like I'm like, it pays the bills and it's directing. So like,
yeah,
cool.
no, same in that, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, we all have to, all indie creators. I remember Francis Ford Coppola had said, I'm a winemaker. You know, that's what he said. He's like, we all have to fund our art somehow.
Totally.
And so I always think of that whenever I'm doing something I don't necessarily want to do. I'm like, you know, like this this pays for what I love to do. So
it definitely helps. It helps now that it's like in the
realm,
vicinity of what I want. But like when it wasn't, it was like, oh my God. You know?
And that just opens up a whole thing, because it seems that you know, I chatted with another female director who during the pandemic had also, you know, been directing commercials over Zoom. And, you know, it's this, it really does seem like the media realm is expanding in so many different directions to include social media. And so if you can make your living doing that, it's just going to make you a better narrative director when you get on set, you know?
Yeah, and a lot of companies are willing to take risks on like not as big names, you know, like, because it's like, oh, it's just social media. It's like, well, you need it, and like, you know, however many hundreds of thousands of people watch it, so it has to look good. But they're just kind of like, they'll hire newbies to it, which you know is just really cool.
Yeah, because you can tell right away if somebody's got like that creative vision.
For sure. Yeah,
and I think you,
definitely.
by the way, like you touched on a few things, and I really want to talk about, you know, your first feature and how that went, because it turned into such a successful venture. But I did get to view the work in progress of How to Hack Birth Control, which is excellent. And it's so, I mean, you definitely have an original voice, and I can, you know, it's edgy and funny and great visuals. You have a background in editing as well. You do a lot of your own editing and
I mean, well, it's one of those, like, I've been editing since I was in TV production, right? And so it's one of those things that I was actually going to say, because I know that you asked like for tips for people and stuff like that too, is that for women, like, one thing I can emphasize is just edit your own stuff, like in the indie world, because there's so much creative control that you have over that. And especially if you can't afford to pay people a lot of money, you can't expect people to care even half as much as you do about your projects. And like, if it's a male dominated industry, like, you know, it's way easier to edit your own stuff. And so
it's a technical skill you can practice on your own time and get better at on your own time and learn on your own time.
Because I wasn't intent, like, even like Happy Holidays, like even before like 5 years ago, I wasn't editing my own stuff. It just sort of happened because I was like, I couldn't find someone I vibed with, and I couldn't afford to pay some people what they deserved. And I was like, well, I used to edit, so let me just pick up the skill again. But back to Birth Control, and I'm really excited to release this. And there's an amazing cast and crew involved in this. And we shot it during the pandemic, which was its own fun thing, but luckily my best friend actually runs or helps run the DC pandemic response, the District of Columbia, and she actually helped me create a custom pandemic plan, basically as if she would for work, but she made it for the whole film. And so that was like, it was extremely helpful. And but it was super fun to shoot, and like, I'm just really excited to get it out there and for women to see it.
Do you have launch plans yet?
I do. Well, it's kind of like, not like, it's a little under wraps. I don't want to jinx it yet, but I have a whole thing, like a whole plan, a whole strategy that is beginning in about a week and a half. So
cool.
Like, we do like a follow-up in like 6 months.
Great. Totally. I feel like it'll probably be I mean, this episode won't come out until after that. So everyone listening should absolutely go online now and find How to Hack Birth Control by Sassy Mohen, because you're going to love it. It's 3 installments, right? And so you've done it as sort of it's billed as like a TV miniseries. So you've got 3 installments. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was saying, like, I'm not sure where it's going to end up, like who buys it. The main point of this is, unlike every other thing I've done before, is like you kind of make something and hope like someone watches it or something like that. This is a very like, I'm not releasing it until it's sold, and then they're going to be in control of the marketing and stuff, but I'm putting in, you know, the groundwork of everything else that's involved in the project.
Yeah,
So,
because
yeah.
even if somebody does buy it and get it out there, it is that thing too. And I definitely desire for filmmakers and creators who are making their own projects to know this, that even if you get with the best distributor or, you know, a big company, word of mouth and what little promotion you can do on your, like whatever you can do on your own always helps. It's amazing, you know.
Yeah, you should. I find that promoting us on social media is I very important in the top, like, oh, there's one. In the top, like, I don't know, 5 important things of a film that's overlooked is like from the beginning, start with a social media hype. Like even my second AD, when she was amazing, and she told me the reason she applied for the project is because she liked the website, and then it was just a logo. That was all it was. But it's like you learn through trial and error of making different films of what catches people's attention. And I feel like if you have like a cohesive branding and social media marketing, even if it's just your own stuff, people tend to take it more seriously because they think you're more serious about it. You know, you may be just as serious like without that stuff, but it does show, like, right, like even when you think about
what you put the energy behind.
Yeah.
You know, and when you put energy behind something, people can feel like they're going to get, it's going to be worth their time if it was worth your time.
Totally. Yeah. And so I'm, you know, with And How to Hack Birth Control too, I feel like it's an important message because it's a comedy, but it's also teaching women, or maybe they don't need to be taught, or just hearing things of how to empower you and your sex life and how to do it safely. And I feel very like impassioned about it. I have a lot of friends who didn't know a lot of this stuff, which was very surprising to me. Like one of the crew members, even, she told me after going through it, she's like, oh, I just went to Planned Parenthood and I got the patch. Like I didn't know I could get it on a sliding scale, and now I get it for free, you know. And it's just there's all this there's a lot of ways to get access to birth control, which I feel very important for women, because it's not about not having children. It's about having children when you want to, if you do, and how to do it safely and how to have it not affect your life. And I just feel like if more women were aware of how easy it is, or easy is the wrong word, how accessible it is, if you put in the legwork, that it could make your life that could make your life a lot easier. There's the easy.
Absolutely. I found it to be definitely empowering, first and foremost, and also it is educational. But it's in such a fun, you know, carefree, social commentary, comedic way, very edgy. There's a lot of I mean, this opens, I have 2 things, really, 2 questions for you. Is empowering, because it feels like, you know, the short that I watched of yours, Fear Actually, which you can find on YouTube, is Fear Actually. It's very funny. It's about Pennywise the clown from It.
From It, yeah.
And you know, it's mental health is at the core of that story. Do you feel that tackling these larger issues in fun, digestible ways is something that you feel like is your brand, or that you feel like you always want to try to do? Or
yeah, absolutely. I always actually go into every project thinking of like what I'm trying to say. I always think about how this will impact women. It's a very important for me for the intention anyway is for a woman to watch any of my pieces and walk away like maybe having a little bit of different perspective on the world, a little bit more strength in what they can do. Because I feel so often, and I know always the caveat is like, it's getting better now, but like, you know, on the scale is like women's stories are overlooked. And if they're told, they're often not told genuinely. They're often more often than not written by men, which is fine. Like women write men, men write women, but without the perspective. Like my fiance and I recently watched the film The Women from 1933, the comedy, and It's this whole thing was like, it was a big progressive piece because it's about women, it's only women in it, but it was one, written and directed by a man, and two, one of the most sexist films I've ever seen in like my life, you know. And it's like, this is what women watch and are told,
and that's all we
you know,
had access to for so
right,
long. Yeah,
totally. And like women, you know, like we're told like this is how you should act. I really find in so many films and TV shows when women are painted as crazy or overreacting and stuff, that they miss the whole point of like the situation, and also that women are very much like stereotyped into the
yes,
way that they react to relationships or family or whatever, as opposed to men have a huge depth of, you know, characters that they can watch on TV and film that they can find someone to relate to.
yeah.
And so yeah, I really just want with like my films, if possible, for women to watch it and think like, I can relate to that, and that person got through it, or
Yes.
you know, I can try and do this with my life, because that's another thing with birth control, is it's not even just about birth control, but it's about like how to stand up to a man who
Yeah, taking the
pressures you,
power back.
right, like to how to like, so when I was dating, like guys like always try to persuade you to not wear a condom, which was always like crazy to me, because I'm like, hey,
And you know,
why would you?
when you're about to sleep with someone
Right.
who's doing that, it's like, okay, so you obviously do this for everyone. That makes
Totally.
you want to wear one even more. Yeah.
Right. And like I always say no, but I have friends who have been like, well, you know, I just like went with it because I liked him or the whatever. And like the film was like, this is how you deal with a guy who pressures you to not use a condom. Like these are things that women shouldn't be ashamed about and shouldn't be afraid to talk about, in my opinion. And I think that like we should be more open about this stuff as women and as a society, because I just think women will just be a lot happier for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit on something huge, several huge things. But first, the thing about women having to, yeah, we don't see stuff in the light of, the point of view was always a man's point of view. And so,
Totally.
you know, when you talked about like how women were painted, you know, I mean, it's even like shows like I Love Lucy, right? Where
Yeah,
all
totally.
is such, you know, she steals the show. She's clearly, you know, in one way, the show is like, oh yeah, women are funny and talented. But on the other end, it's like, oh, there's a whole episode where Fred tells, where Lucy freaks out and Fred tells Ricky, oh, just slip her a sedative. I do that to Ethel. And it's like normal. And I'm like,
Yeah.
That's insanity.
It's crazy. Like just one small point jumping off that is I recently rewatched the pilot for Modern Family, and that is so sexist. It kind of blew my mind a bit because, you know, the show progressed. Like it's one of those shows I put on the background, you know, so like I've been through the 11 seasons right now, but like the show progresses and gets to a better place. But in the pilot, and it's the Modern Family, right? It was like big and different. Everyone's like, whoa, it's so big and different. But the women like are talked down to. They constantly talk to the daughter, Alex, like, oh, you shouldn't be so smart. You won't get a guy. And like all the girls are painted as stupid. The women don't have jobs, you know?
Yeah,
it's
totally.
And the way that they talk about and like objectify women in this very subtle way, it reminded me of actually what it was like to live in 2009, you know, and just things that we kind of have hopefully progressed from since then. It was crazy, shocking to me.
12. Yeah, it's so funny you say that. My wife and I are just watching it through as well. I've never watched it all the way through.
Yeah.
So as you're saying this, I'm like, I and it was several episodes in where I said, does Claire have a job? And I'm like, because I was like, and even the believability factor of, you know, living in Southern California on a realtor's, you know, with a family of 5, totally. Like, I'm just like, this is so full of shit.
I know.
But yeah. And so, you know, and I struggle with that line with, you know, Sofia Vergara's character, because I love that she's celebrated as being sexy and voluptuous and all that stuff, but there are moments when she's reduced down to only that.
Totally. Yeah. It's very frustrating.
So I know, and this is something we could go on about. I mean, I know. I just watched an old movie. I watched Along Came Polly with Jennifer Aniston and Stiller.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and I remember loving it growing up, and I went to watch it, and I'm like, there is no depth to Jennifer Aniston's character. We're supposed to believe that this guy's head over heels in love for, or I mean, that they really fall in love, and like it's like two very, you know, basic character traits that she's given, and Yeah, and it's just like, you know, and we need women. The point is, we need women to really tell it, the experience from a female lens. I mean, and this
Sure.
proves our point. So
Yeah. It's like preaching to the choir, but
yes. But yeah, so, and the other thing that you mentioned, you know, I mean, I really want to pick your brain about how to hack birth control in general, because I mean, this isn't a small little, like, you know, two people in a room talking about where a guy's trying to
yeah, the
convince a chick.
budget's like
Yeah.
at least like over 60K by this point. I
I
kind
was
of
going to ask
stopped
what the
looking.
okay, what's the budget? Tons of locations, tons of great special. I mean, it's fun. It's a great
Yeah.
visual watch. So it was 60,000. Did you crowdfund? Did you self fund? Did you find investors? How did you come up with the money?
I
You don't
worked
mind. I always
multiple
try that's,
yeah.
you know, it's one of the most important parts of any
Totally. No,
film.
for sure. Because I've done the crowdfunding thing and stuff. And for this one, I just worked multiple jobs and basically didn't have a day off for like, like a year or something. It's not like there was $60,000 up front, right? Like we're talking about something that's been, we shot in
Over
November.
time.
So, right. So it's like I'm still working multiple jobs to continue to do this. And also on top of that is that a lot of the crew people I've worked with for years. And so while like they're doing big, fancy, expensive projects now, while I'm still paying them, they're down to like, do it on a lower budget just because of the relationship that I have with them. And also that they know that I'm not going to abuse their time. That's another thing that I find a very nice compliment the people on my post team have said to me is like, you go out of your way to not waste my time, because I'm like, I've been on the other side of that. And man, does it suck to have your time wasted when you're not getting paid a lot,
Yeah. And even the thing is that, you know, they can trust the product, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important as well. When I think when people have trust in a storyteller and in a director, and you know, then it is much easier as well. In addition to making them feel like their time isn't wasted, they get something out of it also.
Yeah. Totally. And another thing that, I mean, it's not like this is a hack that can be repeated, but like the pandemic, honestly, like as terrible as it was, helped a lot, because I personally, like, we saved so much money, not driving places. I saved so much time not having to drive to jobs or drive to meetings, that I was able to utilize that time to work on the project. Because like basically where I'm at right now is I'm just like, okay, this is happening. This is the big next step I've been working for and planning for a long time, and nothing's going to get in my way. And I'm just kind of on overdrive to get to that point. So I look at it as, rest later, like rest later when it's released, just work now to get there sooner, because I just really want to get it out there. And it was nice because on set too, a lot of the actors said that another compliment was like, wow, this is just so well oiled. Like this is going really well, and I'm just like, well, I've done this so many times. Like there was of course mistakes made, but like I've made some big mistakes like in the past, but it's like the big mistakes are, knock on wood, like done, right?
Yeah.
Like I've done the stupid stuff. Other people have done the stupid stuff. And once you do that enough times, you learn kind of how to predict it. And my goal now is just to prevent any of those things from even growing, from even becoming a thing in the first place. And I'm proud of the way that the film was handled, and just everyone involved was like really professional and really cool to work with. I hope to work with all of those people again.
Yeah, I mean, you got a beautiful, you have a beautiful cast. You have choreographed dances in this. I mean, this is really extraordinary. And so, it's the mistakes have been made. We all definitely make them as we go. And I think, you can tell from watching How to Hack Birth Control that it's definitely not your first rodeo, because there's so many moving parts. I mean,
right.
For those of you listening who are just getting started, start with a small story.
Please don't go big.
Like, yeah, don't go big, as small as possible. Plus, like when you learn to tell a small story, it enables you to tell bigger ones even better.
You learn so much from doing that. And like I found that even when I was starting, just learning how to make up for the stuff you don't have, for the money you don't have, like, because you can't fake it. Like that's the thing I saw in film school all the time. Like every guy wanted to make the next Reservoir Dogs, and instead it's just like guys with fake blood. Like, it just looks terrible, right? Because they
Yeah.
don't have the budget to do it, and they're not Quentin Tarantino. So
Yes,
like,
exactly.
which it's like you can get there, but don't go crazy in the beginning, because you're just gonna get burned, and you're gonna get burned in a big way. But like, you should take risks that end up hurting you, like, so you can grow, but you shouldn't just go for the craziest thing at the start, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. My feature stuck is, I feel that we did a lot of things right, and also made a lot of, I definitely made those mistakes and learned those things. I mean, to make a film that was that big, we ended up going over budget. I had to, get more jobs after, and continued to have to pay off, took a long time to continue to pay and it just is that thing where it realistically set me back like several years.
Totally.
Like, yeah. And so it is that thing of, I don't at all regret it. I feel that I was ready to do a feature. I knew I could produce a feature, but it was definitely, learning those things. When you write and produce something, like, at least for me, I know that I always want to direct from now on,
Yeah, for sure.
And no shade to the director, did a beautiful job. She did an excellent job, but just, when you put so much creative work into something and you don't get the final say, or you don't get as much input as you'd like. And that's really the difference. So
no, totally. I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah. So, How to Hack Birth Control is great. And I definitely cannot wait for everybody to see it. And I feel so honored to have gotten to see it. And here's the thing, people listening, is that Sassy tells me, like, oh, it's really rough. Like, it's not done. It's, it's in the process of color right now. Like, I mean, it looks excellent. There's a few moments that I can tell haven't been colored, but I thought for a lot of it had been colored. It looks so good. You guys are in for a treat, so look out for it.
Yeah, the game. My challenge with this was the green screen stuff. Was like, that's where I'm learning a lot. Like, mistakes. I learned something that should be obvious. Like, don't let your talent wear hoop earrings on a green screen, because that causes a lot of pain and keen.
I did not know that, but that's a great tip. Right? I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, but it was my first time using a green screen, and that was the thing with birth control, is I did a lot of things that I've never done before, because I just wanted to challenge myself, like the dancing, the choreography. I've always wanted to do something like that, but I've never had the budget or capability to. And it was funny because, on set, you get there and there's this huge, we had everyone like sequestered in this big parking lot because of COVID, and like the extras were over there and the crew was over there, and and you show up and like the DP's like, okay, where do you want to start? And I'm in my head, I'm like, I don't know.
Totally. Yeah.
On the outside, I'm like, okay, let's do this. Like, and then it just, I learned a lot, but it's also like, once you get into it, it was intimidating to me to do it, even though I'd set it up for myself. But as soon as I got into it, I was like, no, I got this. Like, this is just a much bigger version of little things that I've done before. So you just apply those same rules to it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think you were successful, and I look forward to
Thanks.
seeing where it ends up and all that beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And so leading up to this, leading you to where you are now, someone who can pull off directing such a, massive scale, multiple locations, multiple actors, choreography, green screen, all these things.
Yeah.
You graduated from Chapman, so you went to film school, and something really unique and rare happened to you, which is they discouraged your thesis film because they thought it was too ambitious, the production of it. They told you not to do it because it was too ambitious, right?
Yeah, well, it kind of basically, what I realized my sophomore year of Chapman was that I was going to walk out of film school with the same thing that everyone else was, in the sense that it's like, okay, you get to do a junior thesis that has these rules that has to be done. You have to do a senior thesis that can only, X number of days, X length, whatever. And on top of that, you're not even guaranteed a spot to direct those. It was like you had to apply and go through a whole thing. And what I started piecing together was, how it's all men in film school, basically.
Yep.
Like, Chapman has this ridiculous statistic, or at least they used to, no offense to Chapman, was that like the film school was 75% women or something like that. But that's including broadcast TV, PR, and film study, the theater department. So it's like, that's 70%
actors
women.
and women, actors,
right.
Female actors and women in PR. I mean, PR is a huge female field.
Sure, which is great, but like
Yeah, they're
I
not film
brought
directors.
I brought my friend's cousin to Chapman a couple years ago, and I had her sit in on a directing class with a teacher that I'm friendly with. It was like a 300 level class, and I said to her before we went in, you know, I don't know what it's like now, but when I was in these classes, it was like 10 guys, one artsy outspoken chick, me, and then one very butch woman, and there was never anything different. And we walked in and she turned and laughed. She looked at me and laughed because that's exactly what the dynamic was.
That's every film set too.
Yeah, right. No, totally. And so basically, like at Chapman, I started piecing this together, and it wasn't like a lightning moment, but I decided to make a feature, and I I got a lot of support at first from people, like when the school year was starting. And then when people realized that it was actually happening, it was like a total 180. And when I had my first crew meeting for it, the first real crew meeting, I forgot about this until last year, because we have the whole thing documented in behind the scenes mini DV tapes, and I was digitizing them last year. And the first crew meeting actually turned into basically like 10 to 15 guys telling me how this was a bad idea and that I was dumb for making it, and I was in over my head and I should never do this. Was a crew meeting in my living room of my peers at Chapman, and I just, was sitting there, and it's like it doesn't compute, right? When I knew in my heart of hearts, I'm like, no, I'm a director. This is what I'm here to do. I'm here to learn. And the thing is that like they were right for most of it. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no. It's like I call Happy Holidays sometimes like the smartest, stupidest decision I've ever made. It sounds like, like your film, you learned a lot of things too.
Smartest decision, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And like the thing is though, is that like even if you don't know how to do those things, why shouldn't you try? And
diving in, like honestly, like we're saying start small to people, which is true, you should, but
right.
dive in, because diving in is where you're going to learn.
Yeah, and the other thing is that like the cast was only really 5 people plus a mom, and I had experience working with actors and directing in high school, right? Like I'd done 5 plays of different sizes, and in those like really getting to understand how actors work. And I also noticed in film school that most film directors weren't focused on the actors, right? They're focused on the cinematography or the effects or whatever, that I felt like there was something that was being overlooked there. And so what happened is I had a teacher advisor, one of the only female directing teachers, and like one of 2. And she basically was like, okay, we'll submit this to Chapman so I get 3 units of independent study. And all I'm asking for is some of the film equipment. And we had just gotten a new film school that year. It was the big debut. And I was actually friends with one of the guys who worked in the film equipment place. And he was like, there's so much extra film equipment. Like you're not gonna have a problem getting these like C-stands and sandbags you're asking for, And so anyway, I got this call from Chapman that they had reviewed my proposal and said the project was too ambitious. And so I couldn't have film equipment. And I still remember the moment it happened. I was walking home to a rehearsal and I was just stunned because I wasn't even asking for like anything, you know what I mean?
The equipment that the student should have access to.
Right. Like not even a dent in what they needed. And they made me go through all these hoops to get it. Like my co-producer and I, we got all our ducks in a row. In a way, it was helpful because we had to get all our ducks in a row. And like I had a meeting. The only way I got the meeting with the person who would approve it is we sat outside the dean of the film school's office for like 2 hours, and he just happened to walk by with the provost who I knew, and he was like, "Hey, Sassy." I was like, "Hey, so funny story, blah, 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 blah." And the dean of the film school looked like, what are these 2 children doing here talking to me, And so anyway, so Chapman eventually, through much painstaking begging, agreed to let us rent the equipment. And the like crazy thing about it is they even gave me slack for like the premiere of it. Like I booked this theater, the film school theater, their brand new thing, like 6 months in advance. And I called to follow up once, twice. And then, like a couple of weeks before or something, I called to follow up again. They said, "Oh, that's actually the night of something else. So we let it go." And I was again shocked. And so at this point we had built a huge social media following for the film, which is like a whole other thing. And
what year was this again? Like
this was in Yeah, so 2007. And like a lot of cool, we utilized social media for all of it. Like we did these behind the scene podcasts on YouTube. Then Facebook actually launched the mini feed the week of our auditions. And so it's like we got all of, and it just so happened that myself and Dylan, the co-producer, understood social media, and we weren't even trying to like do anything with it. We were just doing what we knew. And it happened like by the end of it, not only had like we got in distribution for the film, but the website had clocked in over 100,000 hits worldwide. The podcasts were viewed all over the place. And, you know, I screened it around the country, and it, you know, it's not great. Like it's okay, you know, like as a film, but I wrote it when I was 19.
It's a student thesis. Yeah. And you made money like it, right? Like it
right. Yeah. We made our money back. And actually a lot of the crew on it are doing great things now. The biggest one of which is Ludwig, who just won an Oscar for Black Panther. He was a composer in Happy Holidays, and now he's composing Mandalorian, which is awesome. Like
that's amazing.
He totally just, yeah. And like other people involved, and we got a lot of people from USC in it, and everyone said, you know, I'm part of this because like film school won't let me do this. Like I can't compose a feature, I can't edit a feature, like, you know, so how am I going to get a job?
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, kind of the short end of it was very hard and difficult, and it almost collapsed in on itself multiple times, you know, but somehow through all of it, we finished it. And I learned so much about how to deal with people, and also just men and men and women too. Like this one girl sat me down and said like, why are you doing this? Don't you want to wait till you're older to do something? Like she was genuinely concerned about me, that I was making this decision, which was just very shocking. Because I really hadn't expected, because I wasn't even trying to do something different.
Yeah, I knew that you were like, I have a project, I want to make it. Like I think you know, it's that thing of when people see other people, you know, doing big things, they can project their own fears onto them and be a naysayer and be discouraging rather than encouraging, and you know what I mean. And it's so interesting, but it's such a great story and perseverance, such a great lesson in that, and how, you know, against all odds, like what a great story.
Yeah, definitely.
You stuck with it, and being able to utilize social media, which I guarantee at that time, you know,
was huge.
And all the people at Chapman who weren't like, I just guarantee that the individuals who ran that program probably weren't hip yet to the power of social media, you know?
Yeah, it was really interesting, because like the social media aspect of it came to benefit all my projects after that. Like I did this web series about Abby like 3 years after that, I think, and that did very well. It was shown on buses in Mexico, which I think is like the coolest
thing. That is the coolest.
I mean? Like with like dub subtitles. I have no idea where, I just know it happens. So like, but that, like, we used all the social media for that, and it was just stuff that I knew because of Happy Holidays. And so it's like, and I actually, to get out of my day job in 2012, I started a social media and branding company for a couple of years, just because of all the stuff I learned. And people were like, hey, let me hire you to do this for my film and this and stuff. The only problem is I don't really like doing social media. So, you know, that was that's
the funny thing. It's like when you are like, when you're like, I want to do creative, you know, when you have stories to tell, it's like I tend to think that the thing I'm best at is producing. I'm you know, and not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I'm an excellent producer. Like, you know, like I got big name actors in my first feature film, like how I, you know, did a lot of really crazy things that I'll go into in another thing, but it paid off. And so like, you know, and I also got amazing location deals because I went door to door knocking, which I think is something that, no offense to men, and this may be a little stereotypical, but most of them would have too much pride, or their egos wouldn't let them go asking door to door. And, you know, at the time, a 28, 29-year-old woman, when I was knocking on the door, they're just like, sure, you want to make a movie in our house? Why not?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God. Just to play off the like sexist angle, like sometimes I've gotten out of like guerrilla filmmaking tickets 3 times by just playing like a dumb a dumb woman. Like,
That's
not,
hilarious.
it's just, and I used to be blonde too. Like, this is a while ago, but like the police show up and they're like, do you have a permit? I'm like, what's a permit? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they're like, okay, it's just
So
a
we
dumb
have
woman.
to shut
Like,
this down. Yeah.
yeah, like she doesn't know what she's doing. This must not be a film.
Yeah, totally. This must not be a film.
Yeah.
That's a really great, that's a great hack. That is a great,
Yeah.
excellent hack.
Totally. I mean, it's like, not to perpetuate a stereotype, but if you're in a place
But if you
that,
can tell someone's already an ass who thinks it, fine. I'm not going to change your opinion.
right, like run with it if it helps to your advantage, So anyway.
I love that. I just think that story is so inspiring. So thank you for breaking it down.
Totally. It was, I mean, Happy Holidays was awesome. And like, when I think about the crap that I went, like, I was so broke. That's the thing, is like, I had like 15 units of school, and like my schedule was like school Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, homework / rehearsals Tuesday, Thursdays, shooting Saturdays and Sundays for like 5 months or something like that, with holidays in between. So like, and I didn't have a lot of money, and it taught me a lot about like, I feel like too, with films are very expensive. This, everyone knows this, but it's like, you have to, for me, it was like, okay, I could spend the little money I have on this that'll give me short-term gratification, or I could skip that altogether and just use it for the film. And so it just taught me a lot about patience and the where money should go in a project and how to do it successfully.
Yeah, which is so important, because my first guest, and I know you mentioned you listened to the episode with Keely Cole. I loved what she mentioned, where she said that her and her husband, like their big thing was that they're like, we're not going to be the couple that goes to Palm Springs every weekend, or we're not going to do, and there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with it, but it becomes your social life, because when you get to go to film festivals and play your film for other creatives, it's almost a deeper satisfaction that you can get from, rather than just going out for drinks 5 nights a week,
Totally. And it's like, it's never, for me, it's never not paid off, in the sense that each film, for the most part, has always had a bigger budget, and it's allowed me to get better jobs that pay me more to make bigger films with bigger budgets, So it never feels like a sacrifice. Like you say, we are absolutely that couple. Because
totally,
we're just like, things reopen. I'm like, okay, so I don't really want to go out again for like another month and a half till the film's done. And he was like, yeah, no, absolutely. Just save her money and work. So
yeah, 100%. I actually just picked up a side gig because I have a couple projects I want to fund. And it's that thing of like, I do desire to do a feature probably in 2022. I was hoping it would be this year, but it probably won't. But I've got another short I want to do. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to, all my other resources, social media, like crowdfunding, social media, reserve that for the feature. I'm going to go, gonna, work some side hustles, save up, and get to make this new short that I have,
And I bet if your short, is really good, that you'll get like better crew people, you'll get better actors who turn out. Like, it just, it really just pays off to make that investment that doesn't seem as glamorous when you first look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that, it's just a different lifestyle, and it does always pay off. But
yeah.
But it's not, and it's okay. Like, I think that's the thing is, society, having a house, having a family, all those different things, it's so ingrained in us. That's what we've watched on TV since the time we were small. And so recognizing that these alternative lifestyles exist, it's like, there's no shame in it. It's almost, to each their own, make your own choices. I've got these filmmaker friends that travel the world that are, they're just geniuses, and they live out of their backpack. They bring their dog everywhere with them, and they pick up freelance film stuff wherever they go. And they're making a feature on film. Like, they're shooting it on 16 millimeter.
That's expensive.
It's so expensive. And they are doing it piece by piece. And it's so inspiring, because in between, they've done a couple shorts that have blown my mind, And so it's like, who cares if they don't, have an apartment in New York anymore, or an apartment in LA anymore? They're doing it,
For sure. And like, you can't wait for the money to show up. That's something that, I learned with Happy Holidays, and I've never again repeated in terms of just like hoping that magic money falls from the sky. And it's funny, like almost every single, even in Birth Control, every single film I've done, some guy has told me not to do it because I should wait for something. I should wait for better camera or more money or for the script to be better or whatever. And it's like, why would I wait for that when I know that it's the time to do it? That's the key thing, right? If you know deep down that it's not the time to do it, like you're saying 2022, right? Because you're being realistic about your life and money and expectations, that's fine. But it's like, if you know in 2022 that you're ready to make your film, it's like, you're just going to do it. Yeah. And I'm sure people will tell you not to, and you're just be like, that's your opinion,
Yeah, so. Exactly. That's it. And it's interesting, like there is, of course, there's a fine line between whether or not, it is possible to leap in too soon, for sure. But if somebody's ready, they're ready, and you have to let them make that mistake for themselves, or just have that experience and learn that lesson. Because, I was going to do a short, and I went to hire a DP, and it needed to be a restaurant. And so there was a restaurant at the time on Pier Space that was within my budget. And I knew in my mind what shots we needed. And to me, I was like, there's no reason that we can't get this here. It's such a minimal part of the story. And in my mind, like, I'm not going to need a massive, like it was totally feasible. Totally. And this DP is like, I've worked in that space. It's just, there's so many challenges. And I'm like, I know my project though. And I'm, you know what I mean? And so his can't do attitude, like I didn't work with them, There's just this thing of like, there really is that negativity that can hinder so much. There's one thing to be like genuine and being like, look, I know you, like, offer an alternative or for sure something, or if it's like, this is exactly why, versus that's just like a tight space. And I think it, has too many challenges. Well, then you're not on the same page as me with the project,
Yeah, so. No, because it's like, it's about being realistic. Like I had a friend, and he just made a short film a month or two ago, and it's a period piece, and he lives in San Francisco now. And he asked me, he's like, I only have these days to shoot it. Do you think I should shoot this restaurant? You're talking about restaurants. I'm shooting this restaurant in this Pier Space place in LA and save this money, or should I pay extra money for everyone to go up to San Francisco? And I said to him, and that's the way I look at things too, is that like, in the end, will the money that you spend in San Francisco be worth it? Or like, will you watch that restaurant scene in LA and think, man, it would have been so much cooler and this would be much better film if this had happened? And so we shot in San Francisco, and it was great because the restaurant he had there was awesome. It was perfect. Like, and it was just, it sucks because like, he didn't really have that money to spend, but he was like, no, this is going to add like tens of thousands of dollars more value to the project by doing this. And that's just, you have to make calculated risks.
Yeah. Like I wanted a brunch vibe, and I'm like, this restaurant has that. I you know what I mean? And these other options don't. And they don't look right. And it's just, this is the one. Yeah. I mean, you have to, and that's a great tip and great insight as well, is that, weighing the value versus, the money always, in film. Where are your investments? There is that story about Quentin Tarantino where he specifically asked for like a lot of money, specifically for music. Like he knew exactly that certain music was going to elevate the production, and he's like, I don't need it for the actual production. I need it for the music. I only need, 1 million to shoot this or whatever it was.
Totally.
And I think that that's just always, and that comes with experience. You learn that as you go, like what things cost. Like now I understand, of course, the importance of a marketing budget. If you're going to release independently, of course.
Right. And it's also, the other thing is that with it is like, every time that I've run into a financial hurdle, which has been very frequent, is especially when I was younger, is that I would either teach it to myself or accept that was an option that I had to pay someone. And the thing is that like, if you're in film and you understand the basic concepts of it, like it's not that hard to learn how to build a website on, some page that doesn't require HTML. It is challenging and it's very frustrating, but I learned how to do it because I'm like, well, that saves me however much money, right, to do this. And then it's like learning how to edit, or just learning little things that overall just save you money and time, even though you feel like you're spending more time than it's worth in the beginning of it.
But in the
It's
long
just,
run,
yeah,
like
totally.
like editing, I started learning color during the pandemic because I
For
feel
sure.
that, you know, it is such a costly thing.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough that I would color my own feature, but but it is
Totally.
that, but you know, I desire to dabble with further shorts and get good enough so that I don't spend that money on the smaller projects.
And even just like knowing how to speak the language with the people who are experts in it is very helpful, because not only do they respect you more, but you get what you want quicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There
better.
is a language. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've talked about your first feature venture,
Yeah.
which is super inspiring. From there, you did a bunch of shorts. Can you
Yeah.
touch on, you really lean into the comedy realm, which I love. And you use your voice is so clear. Is that like, and I don't even want to say, but everything that you do seems, there's a tongue-in-cheek aspect, which I really love.
Yeah, first of all, that's kind of how I see the world, is like in one of those Fear Actually interviews, someone was like asked me something about it. And I was like, well, I just think everything's hysterical. Like even the worst things,
Same.
like they're funny, right? Like, I mean, Trump was president. That's pretty hysterical and terrible, but also really funny. Like, what was that? How did that happen? Right. You know, and like, I was so upset the entire time, but also laughing a little.
Totally,
like, you know,
totally.
so
I mean, yeah, he was a reality. Like, this is what happens when you elect a reality star. The news becomes a reality show.
It's
like,
so ridiculous. And I think that like I love the Marx Brothers growing up, and just that type of humor, you know, of calling out things like they are, but in a way that almost not always, but if you're not smart enough, you miss what's being said, you know. And I have learned how to rein that in over time, because like I had someone watch this other web series I did, and she's like, it's funny, but you have to get the joke. And she's like, and not a lot of people are going to get
compliment.
yeah. But I also was like, well, I want people to get the jokes, so I need to broaden my jokes. Right. And so with birth control, what I did was I took all these things that I'd learned, and also like techniques for all these social media commercials that I've done. And I applied all of those techniques to the type of story that I want to make, so I could make something visually stimulating, but also that appeals to a broad audience, that brings you in, while also like slipping my message in at the same time. I mean, it's not subtle, but like, you know,
Totally.
Yeah, I think that like I really enjoy comedy. I do want my next project. I have a cool post-apocalyptic thriller that I've been I did a short test for like years ago, and now with the world, I was like, oh, this could fit well, you know.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
Like I really like I like smart humor is, I think, the best way to put it. I think though, like my second favorite film I've done is this film, or it's a TV pilot called Weedland. And that's more of like a drama comedy, but like in the same tone as The Good Wife, in a sense, where it's like, it's a drama, but it's also like funny at the same time,
sure.
you know?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed doing that. But that also requires like a relationship with a good actor as part of the huge thing. And I think when I was younger, one reason I shied away from drama is because of like the time and money that goes into pulling off dramas successfully, you know, like, because you need to have convey such a serious message, and it's easier to get away with stuff in a comedy, but it's not. So now I'm not doing it for that sense. Now I'm just doing it because I was like, this is just the story I want to tell at the moment, you know? So I hope to do more comedies, but I also hope to do like tons of other stuff too. Like,
yeah, I think it's good
my post-apocalyptic thriller.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, like, my roots are all in comedy, so that's the genre I've always played in. But I have an idea for a psychological thriller. I've never had, you know what I mean, and it's contained. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll actually play with this and see where it goes. There's no harm in that, and if you can successfully, you know, tackle multiple genres, you know, you've got it made in the shade. That's everything.
I mean, I wrote this too with I wrote this because I wanted to make it, and it's a film I love, but it's also because it's like, well, this is a film I'm using to sell myself. This is the stepping stone to like, my career's been like going up to here. Now I'm like ready to go to the next level. And I'm like I felt like the most successful thing for people to watch would be a short comedy. right? Because who doesn't love it? Like their TikTok funny videos.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always get somebody to buckle in for that.
Yeah, where it's a little harder for a comedy to get people to like sit down and want to be sad for like 10 minutes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel the same way. And it is, and especially in the independent realm, independent dramas, you do, unfortunately, like you mentioned, the money and time that it takes to pull it off well. Hats off to the people who do it, but it's the thing of, the actors are so important in that aspect.
Yeah.
And you have to work with people who are a little less experienced. It's not that they're a bad actor, but they maybe are less experienced,
Totally.
It was so funny that you mentioned how you were able to work with actors because of your background in theater. Because when you first mentioned the theater thing, my mind immediately went to, so very early on, you learned how to direct actors, because that's what the theater is.
Yeah, and that's what's so important about it too, is even with Happy Holidays, with all my early stuff, I put acting first. And because it's like at the time I couldn't afford the expensive lenses, and we're definitely guerrilla filmmaking, like all of it, or like 95% of it, and like everyone had 5 jobs on set. But it's like, if the acting's good in a situation like that, you can get away with so much. Like you can get away with a little shaky camera work or something that's weird. Absolutely. Because people still want to watch it. And I have always like, and the other thing too is that people forget actors are people, right? Like they're not just like a piece of equipment that shows up on set. And that I like to really get to know them and like work with them to give something worth their time. And I did a web series like 7 or 8 years ago where I starred in it, and that was just a learning experience from start to finish. But I'm really like, it's not the best thing I've done, and I'm not a great actor, like I'm okay, but like I learned so much about being in front of the camera that I had forgotten because I hadn't done it for so long. But like the pressure and just the different aspects and how I would want to be talked to in that situation, I always think about that when I'm working with actors, of like, what is how they want to be here, I want to be here, so let's make this an enjoyable experience and give them something that they want to do well at, right?
Absolutely.
Or else why are they here?
Exactly. And I think it's funny, I was in Stuck, and I had like a nudity scene, not in the movie, but like on set, I had to be,
right.
You know what I mean? Mostly naked, tiny underwear, and like pasties.
Like
and
pasties,
it was very nerve wracking. I'm like, why did and it's so funny because when we wrote the character, like I didn't intend on playing it, but I was doing so much comedy at the time. And my writing partner was like, well, you're not the lead character like Darby, so if you want to be in it, like you should be this. And I'm like, you see me as that? Like I do not, but okay, I'll do it, and so like, because sometimes if somebody else sees something in you, and I do feel that like, that's probably the type of thing I would play, but I was just doing so much performing with stand-up that I was like, oh, maybe these two things can work together.
Sure.
And so during that scene, what was great about working with the female director is that she was very aware of, and her and the lead Heather both went topless and came in and were like, all right, let's shoot. You know what I mean? Like, and it just was like, holy shit. But to have that sort of support and to know that you're not alone was a really incredible thing. And if it had been a male director, I would have been so much more probably just, unless they did something funny like that too, to ease,
Right. Because it's as women, and women actors have said this to me actually on like most of my projects. They're like, I love the sides for the audition, because most of the sides I read are like hot girl when her glasses comes off is hot with big boobs who likes to read. You know what I mean? Like something that is just, how is that a character? And so I always take time to write out actual depth to the sides of the characters. And then also like with the sex scene, with like what you were saying is about Abby, my web series, it was a story, a romantic comedy, and there was a couple sex scenes in it, but they weren't like, raunchy. They were just, whatever, PG rated. Sure. But it was my first time doing it. And this actress, Kagan, like she was a champ, but I realized when we were shooting the first one that it was like her, me, and 10 guys in a small bedroom. Yeah. And I was just like, this must be so awkward for her, because it's very low budget. And then the next scene the next one she did was with a friend of mine, Eric, and Eric and her got along super fine. And so that was a little like easier. But for birth control, the one sex scene is my fiance, because I thought, like one, it would be I know he's not a douchebag, so like
Yeah.
that's one check off the box. But the other thing is I thought that it would make the actress feel way more comfortable, right? And like it was deferred pay, and like I was just like, you know, it's a lot to ask of someone like you're talking about to do that on set, and it was great. And she said afterwards, she's like, this is the most fun sex scene I've ever done. Like I have never gone that loud, and it was great for me to hear that. I was talking to my audio designer about it. I was like, yeah, directors should just cast their spouse in sex scenes.
Like, totally. Because
he was like,
when the spouse, when boss is there calling the shots, like,
right. But it was funny because he was like, I don't think every director could do that. And I was like, oh, fair point. Like, you know,
but if you can, you should. That's
you should. And it also helps he's a great actor too. So, you know,
totally. Yes. Yeah. All the actors are really excellent.
Yeah.
And you also touched on one last thing here. I know we've got to wrap up soon, but you mentioned with being in front of the camera and how much you learned. And I really think it's so interesting. Stand-up comedy for me was the change where when I started editing my own thing, you know, watching myself on camera and then editing and just seeing what it was like, it made me more comfortable in front of the camera. So then I started doing some acting, and it's that thing of being on both sides. Like it's so important. Like even if you don't want to be an actor, try it out, like cast yourself in something just so that you can see what it's like on both sides, because it makes you exponentially more aware.
And I didn't even start out doing that to like be in it. It was just a short, it was a one-off like funny video that did pretty well online called Single Girls Christmas. And I had so much fun shooting it. It's honestly like the most fun I've ever had shooting anything. Like it was LA, it was DC at my old high school. It was great. And I cast myself in it because I was like, well, I'm in LA, I'm in DC. Like, totally. You know, who else is going to do that? And like, I wrote it like knowing like, okay, I can hit all these notes. Like it's not, you know, crazy depth going on here. Yeah. And then afterwards I was like, well, this went well. I guess, you know, I'll keep making it. And it was also actually a time where I started learning how to edit, and it just like that taught me so much, because it taught me how to edit, and it taught me again about what it's like to be in front of the camera and how vulnerable you are truly. Even I would feel like professionals, you know, like it's the same kind of concept. Like you're putting yourself out there, and every word you say, the entire film hinges on. Like if you mess up a line, like you mess up anything, it's like, oh God, that person, you know?
Yeah.
So and I highly recommend it.
definitely. And it, and it will just help you, like you said, like with directing actors too, like how to, like if I were, you know, in this person's shoes.
That's cool. You did stand up. Like I was thinking, I also around that time was like, should I try stand up or should I do this? So that it makes sense though that you did it that way. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I fell into it. I always knew that I wanted to be in entertainment, and I moved out here blindly from Midwest at 18, like after high school, one of those. And I like took a little improv, but I was way too insecure, and social anxiety got the best of me and all this stuff. And then I made a couple shorts, and I knew I loved, I mean, film was always the goal, but then I went through some and writing, because I've always just been a writer, but so film and writing were always the goal. But then I went through like a personal tragedy, and I wrote like 5, it's okay. Thank you. It's all is well now. I wrote a little, like 5 little journal entry that I read and was like, oh my God, this is hilarious. Like this could be a set, you know? And so I was like, why have I never tried stand up? It was like right when like Chelsea Lately was really big and all this stuff. And so I'm like, I'm going to try it. And I fell in love with it at the time, and it has carried me through. But I feel like now that I've healed a lot of those childhood traumas and older things, it no longer serves me in that way. And, you know, but I love the community, and I'm so grateful to have those roots there and know the many talented people that I love. Because when you go to a comedy show, it's like osmosis, you know, you absorb all of that.
For sure.
That great, creative, funny energy. It's glorious.
I bet it taught you a lot about pacing too.
Yes. Oh, rhythm and pacing, like, which made me be able to do any sort of like acting. Obviously acting is rooted in truth and be genuine in the moment, but to understand a comedic beat in a script in a way, definitely
for sure.
Better at that. So this was so fun, Sassy. This was so lovely.
Was great.
I feel like I'm talking to like a soul sister here. Like I,
I'm feeling the same way. I'm like, cool. Like we're on the same wavelength.
Totally, yes, and it's the best. I mentioned your YouTube, that look her up on YouTube, because you've got Fear Actually is up there, some other works, your website, sassymohen.com. People can read even more about the happy holiday stuff. All excellent links to work and your contact info, everything. You should all just find everything there is to know about Sassy. But and look out for How to Hack Birth Control. And if there's anything else that you want to
say, the website is birthcontrolhacks.com.
Birthcontrolhacks.com. Love it.
Yeah.
Cool. So you guys, so that's a good starting off point, because you don't know where it's going to end up, but birthcontrolhacks.com.
Will be to be continued on that one.
Cool.
With hope a good ending.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much. Congratulations on everything. And I will probably have you back again, because I'm sure
I would love to come back.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I love it.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Bye.